Hello again, and for the last time, we have come to the end of our journey through Holy Week. We have come to Friday, Good Friday. And the first question today is, why is it called Good Friday? And for that, we have to go back to Old England, merry old England. Not long after the time of Robin Hood and his merry men, good, as in Good Friday, was another way of saying holy. It carried over into phrases you're familiar with, like the Good Book, and some Christmas songs you're familiar with, Good King Wenceslas, and especially Good Christian Men Rejoice. It's interesting to note, I think, that the origins of Good Friday come from the same time as Merry Christmas. Many historians believe it was the popularity of God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, or Good Christian Friends Rejoice, that led Charles Dickens to mention Merry Christmas in the Christmas Carol. And ever since Dickens wrote the Christmas Carol, everyone says Merry Christmas. So if anyone asks you, what does Merry Christmas have to do with Good Friday? Just tell them you have to go to Bible class. And you came to Bible class to learn about Good Friday, so here goes. I'm going to assume that you're familiar with most of the story, and we don't have time here today to go through the whole story. So I'm going to pick out some details that you may not be familiar with, but I hope you'll find interesting. After they finished the Passover meal, the Last Supper that became the Lord's Supper, they left Jerusalem, crossed the brook of Kidron, and reached the Garden of Gethsemane. Here, Jesus goes off to pray, and the disciples, after passing 3 cups of wine, fall asleep. 2 things we want to note about the Garden of Gethsemane. First, Jesus' agony, the prayer. If it be your will, take this cup from me. Sweat like great drops of blood. And we have to take note here that this is not just physical pain. Jesus had just finished a good meal and had been on a nice walk. This was the beginning of the agony that he would bear in order to take our place for the suffering for our sins. A second thing we want to note from Gethsemane is that when Jesus returned to the disciples and found them sleeping, he said, "Could you not watch with me 1 hour?" And I want to mention that just because you have heard countless pastors say countless times, "Could you not watch with me 1 hour?" Why don't you come to church? Then Judas and the soldiers arrive. Peter grabs his sword, cuts off Malchus's ear. Jesus is taken away to trial. Now, you may recall from the testimony of Nicodemus, the first week in this series, that trial was illegal. The Jews, especially the Pharisees, were very fussy about rules and laws, which makes that trial all the more outlandish. We do know Nicodemus was there, and so was Joseph of Arimathea. Later, on Friday afternoon, those two would finally publicly acknowledge their faith in Jesus by going to Pilate and asking for the body. And we don't know whatever happened to them after that. Wouldn't it be interesting? Can you just imagine what it must have been like for the next meeting of the Sanhedrin? And that, of course, we can only wonder. Jesus was taken to Pilate, and we're going to watch that part of the story in the movie today. The whole Good Friday story from this one movie is still too long for us, but I have put a link to the movie in your handout. The movie is on YouTube, and it's free. This movie just follows Luke. For example, there will be no crown of thorns, no robe, no Barabbas. For that, you have to watch the other movies based on Jesus' life from the other Gospels. But here we're going to watch the story from Luke.
And they took him to Pontius Pilate, the most vicious of all Roman governors. Pilate himself had sentenced thousands of people to a slow death by nailing them to wooden crosses.
And what do you want here at this hour of the morning?
We caught this man misleading our people.
He caused an uproar in the temple market.
What will be his punishment? Sentence him!
I see no reason to condemn this man. No reason.
We found him guilty, telling them not to pay taxes to the emperor, claiming himself the Messiah, our king.
A king? Are you the king of the Jews?
So you say. He began teaching in Galilee, and now he has come here.
In Galilee? Is this man a Galilean? In that case, we'll let Herod deal with him. He's still here in Jerusalem, isn't he? Take him to Herod.
Who is it that you say you are? Who are those you call your disciples? It is said by many you can perform miracles. Do something for me.
My lord, he has been corrupting all the people. He calls himself the king.
This man? A king? Your Majesty. Strike him well. Send him back to Pilate. This is his province.
This man has done nothing to deserve death. So I will have him whipped and let him go.
You are obliged to release one man to us at this festival.
Release to us? Barabbas.
Yes.
Run away with this man.
Yes, give us Barabbas. Lift him up.
So Pilate passed the sentence of death on Jesus. He set free Barabbas, the man they wanted, who had been put in prison for riot and murder, and he handed Jesus over to them to be crucified.
Okay, that's where we'll stop here. But again, if you have the time and you have access to YouTube on the internet, you can watch the whole movie. This is from Luke. Did you catch the part in the movie today about Herod's robe? I said there was no robe in the movie. Well, this was not the robe that the soldiers would put on Jesus along with the crown of thorns. Herod's robe was altogether different. Did you notice what happened to Herod's robe in the movie? Okay, that is the legend of John Mark, that he was the boy who picked up the robe and ran away with it, that John Mark, who was the nephew of Barnabas, who accompanied St. Paul on his first missionary journey. John Mark was left behind by St. Paul on the second journey. So John Mark made his way back to Palestine and hooked up with Peter. And from that point on, we would know him as Mark, the author of the second gospel. And from what we do know from the Bible, the legend could have happened. John Mark's mother was the one who offered her home as shelter to the disciples after Pentecost, after Peter and John had been put into prison. Her house became the place where they could hide. Anyway, back to Good Friday. I'm not going to go into the gruesome details of the crucifixion. The whipping was bad enough. I do want to mention that Jesus spoke 7 times before he died, what we know as the 7 words from the cross. I'm going to do a short devotion or a little homily on each of the 7 words as part of our Good Friday service on Friday evening at Brit Hahn. I listed the 7 words on your handout just so you can see, I wanted you to see that they come from different gospels. Just like everything else in the story of the life of Jesus, the four gospels included different events. And it's always, as you know, if you've been here for enough of these, I'm fascinated by how John's gospel picked up what all three of the other three had left out. And John picked up all of these words of Jesus from the cross. Another topic worthy of note is the timing of the events of Good Friday. The Bible tells us darkness covered the land from the 6th hour to the 9th hour, which in our clocks would be noon to 3 o'clock. Tre or in Latin. Some of you are old enough to remember the good old days, as in Good Friday, when all the stores and businesses would close from noon to 3 o'clock, and most churches would have services going the whole time. People would come and go, and then everyone would come back again for the evening service. Now we have church on Friday evening, Tenebrae, the service of darkness. And by the way, the agony on the cross ended at 3 o'clock, and Jesus died. The Tenebrae service commemorates the burial of Jesus. The darkness in the service of darkness is the darkness of the inside of the tomb after the grave had been sealed. Jesus had already been buried before sunset, because sunset on that Friday marked the beginning not only of Sabbath, but of the Passover Sabbath. One more detail that of Good Friday is often overlooked, but is of great importance to our worship today. At the moment that Jesus died, Matthew 27:51 tells us, at that moment the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. Now the curtain, going all the way back to the days of the tabernacle, was a very heavy, thick cloth that separated the Holy of Holies from the holy place in the tabernacle and then in the temple. This curtain was a barrier that represented the separation from God that we have to endure because of our sin. In fact, the biblical definition of sin is anything that separates us from God. Jesus' death paid the price for our sins, so there no longer had to be a barrier, and the temple curtain was ripped in two from top to bottom. God reaching down from heaven so that now we can reach right up to him. In our church, we can walk right up to the altar to literally receive the body and blood in the presence of God himself. And with that, we will wrap up our journey of Holy Week and prepare to worship with the special services next week in our church. As the pastor says every Sunday, have a good week.